what are you doing about it? And what do you believe about it? Regardless of anything that anyone's ever told you, what you've ever read, at the end of the day, you are actually the only one that can definitively decide what you choose to believe, do, act, and feel.
Ooh, did you guys like that intro? Super excited for this one. Welcome back. Episode 25, The Guilty Conscience. How to make space for shame or regret, conflict resolution, and the power of asking the right questions with Megan Swinford. Thanks for coming back to Open Everything, guys. I'll cut straight to it. We talk about how we met about 45, 50 minutes in, but we're going to open up with one of her poems, straight out of Austin, Texas. Megan, take it away.
Did you know I hate you, all of you, for all the things that you can do and I can't, that you can be and I'm stuck here in a freeze. The death of winter creeped inside me when I wasn't looking. The breath of isolation and fear whispering to me. My mother sang them to me as a child. At night, I lay awake, paralyzed, and the could-be's, the don't do's, the oh no's. Life was full of them then. Every rose had its thorns, so you don't lean too close. Guilty pleasures were all I ever knew. Rather, guilt was all I knew. Shame for being, seeing, believing I could do anything. Subtle. The insidious lies of unworthiness wormed their ways through my thoughts, dined on the creativity of my heart, devouring the color that sparked in my eyes, gnawing at the very essence of my soul. So I hid. I buried, only to find the worms loved the dark. They thrived. Any memory of sunshine twisted, threatened their comfort. So I dug deeper and clenched tighter. Shriveled out of hopes and dreams, the weight crushed my lungs. If only I could scream. Bet they can hear me now. I've learned how to set myself free.
Ooh.
Okay, what spoke to you most?
I feel like you were the thing that hit me most is referencing your like teenage years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there, formative years of identity, no?
Huge aspect. And it's beautiful that again we're doing this. Thank you for coming on. I am piggybacking off of like the power of storytelling. Your story was through poetry.
Yeah.
And it drew a very broad vision. So what is that exactly about? I mean, I could tell you what I pulled from it, but I want you to tell us when that was and like...
Yeah, well, let me look at the date that I wrote it. I wrote it in, August of 2020 was the last time I touched this poem.
What were you contemplating? What were you struggling with? Because that was deep. I felt that on, like I said, 3 or 4 different levels.
Yeah. So I think I had spent at least probably 6 months at home. And at the time, I've been living with my grandmother, who, as much as I infinitely love her, reflects some family dynamics that you can't run from when you're living there. And generational things, right? We have 50 years between us, and so really reflecting on those uncomfortable moments of like, man, Oh, this is a deep one. Like, what's going on here? And I think at the time in August, I was reflecting on starting to teach 6th grade and reflecting on my just experience of 6th grade. Middle school was very awkward. I had a lot of change. I moved schools. I moved cities. A national disaster happened. Several disasters happened collectively with hurricanes, with 9/11. There's a lot going on that never really got explained to me. And I think it really set in this environment internally of just feeling unsafe. And I had family that really didn't know how to work with trauma, as most of us don't. We're not taught. And so it's this really weird dynamic of things are happening, but I have no control over them. And yet at the same time, I don't really know how I'm feeling. And what am I supposed to do with this? And as a kid, that's fine because you don't really have the tools. But as an adult, once collective trauma happened again last year, you start to ask yourself, well, those coping mechanisms never really worked. They weren't mine, right? So if I'm going through trauma, what do I actually need? It's not necessarily me asking for a life outside of trauma. It's asking myself, how can I feel so relaxed around the possibility of trauma that I trust my capacity to relate to myself enough to where I won't set? Right? So then anything that happens is great. Maybe not great, but like I trust my capacity to process. And last year, I really got confronted with like my ability to process.
Was that your first time experiencing that confrontation?
I think it was the biggest ability that I had to objectively process that reflection.
Same.
I have asked questions before, but I don't think I really was able to fully separate myself from trauma and actually identify in the moment, I'm experiencing trauma. This is trauma. Okay, cool. This is a thing that I can experience, that I understand my nervous system is going to go crazy. It's going to take a while for me to calm down. I'm going to need certain things that I may not normally need. And, I got to communicate to people like, stuff's not right. This is an active trauma. Whereas before, I don't think I've ever been able to identify, first of all, in the moment what was happening. It's always been reflective of like, oh, wow, it was a really hard time. Versus being able to be like, wow, I'm going through something, and this is what I'm going through, and this is why I'm going through it, and this is what I need. That capacity to identify and express not only your emotional experience, but what you need in that moment in order to resolve that experience takes a lot.
Takes a lot of time.
Takes a lot of not only time, but commitment to self. Right? You have to spend a lot of time with yourself to be able to actually feel what's going on with you, what's off, to be able to identify why it's off, what caused that dysfunction or disharmony, and then what to do about it. And then not only all of that, but then to share with other people. Not only what's happening inside you, but then how to like relate to you so that you can process it and be okay.
I totally agree.
That whole dynamic is, first of all, why are we not teaching that more often? Because that's really conflict resolution and emotional intelligence at its core. Imagine how many conflicts wouldn't exist if we had that capacity practiced.
Adults are just big kids in a giant playground.
For sure.
This is mine. You can't have.
Well, and
I'm going to fight you if so.
I feel unsafe, right? It goes back to that feeling of insafety of I feel unsafe, so you're a threat. If I view you as a threat, I'm going to relate to you very differently as I'm safe, you're an interesting experience.
1000%.
Right? I'm open, I'm curious, I'm expansive, I'm inviting. Versus I'm defensive, I'm protective, I'm skeptical, and I'm defensive. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think over time, we've programmed ourselves culturally and individually to think if we're protecting ourselves, we're safer.
And this is unconsciously training ourselves to consistently be that way.
True, and the interesting fact, or I don't know if it's fact, maybe that's an interesting word. What's interesting that I've noticed is
observation.
Yeah, observation, experience, is if I'm experiencing something that I don't like, if I'm looking at it from a lens of something's wrong, I'm going to find something wrong. Mm-hmm. If I'm looking at it from the perspective of what's up, I'm just going to understand what's happening. I haven't identified a connotation to the experience. And I've learned this a lot with teaching because I have kids who are 11 and 12 years old that have no concept of a lot of things. They're learning themselves in general, like hormones are a thing, right? Imagine as an adult knowing how much you have to process. And then imagining the first time you ever felt any of those things, right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot in a small body. And being able to hold space for, wow, that's a thought. That's an experience.
Don't usually grown-ups push that to the side?
Well, not labeling that's this or that, right? Like, wow, you thought on that all on your own. Can you walk me through what's going in your mind to think about that? Or, wow, you really committed to that thought. Where did that come from? And really being inviting on who we are and why we're thinking the ways that we are versus only allowing a certain specific thought to be okay.
It's deep because first thing that comes to my mind is, and Dad, I hope you're not hearing this. It's not a big deal. I've forgiven you years ago. But when I moved out to Colorado, it was a whole new world from Louisiana. And in my opinion, Louisiana is... Actually, I'm not even going to elaborate on that.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, when I was curious about something or I had a question, I was told the answer. This is what it is. And I think it fucked me up, and that's why I started healing. That's why I started this journey of, being receptive and, maybe nothing's right or wrong. Maybe it's all perception. Maybe it's all perspective. And thank God I've found that because I was limited to X or a flashlight mentality or whatnot. And if I stayed in that box, who knows what I'd be right now.
Right. Well, and I think that's the value. And I think in my poem when I talk about guilt, right, when you're given answers, especially from people that you love and value and deem as an authority growing up, when you're countering them, it's like a betrayal, right? Like how could, if I trust this adult, let's say we're young, right? In our family, they're telling us these answers of life. And I love my dad or my mom or my figure of authority. Well, if they're telling me this, and it's not making sense to me, then there's a possibility of us believing them over us.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, right, we can easily be conditioned to externalize authority. And in fact, like, often that is asked of kids, right? Same with what you were talking about with your parents. They gave you an answer. You were not in a position of power. You were given something. But
I didn't have the cognitive rationale to question it.
Exactly. True. But at the same time, you have the capacity to think and identify with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of inciting curiosity, you're given submission.
In my early days. See.
Well, but this is what culturally happens across the globe.
Yeah.
In humanity. And it is sometimes easier to not explain something, but to offer an answer. It is much harder to allow another form of existence, right? Like, you know, you can ask anyone to tell them, you know, like, ask them what's going on. And, you know, the question of, well, that's one reality. It's like, well, no, that's what's happening. Okay, but that's a version of reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not the only version. And just that sheer concept is very entangling.
What's the umbrella under? Like, conscious awareness, emotional intelligence, empathy?
I would say actually more so self-accountability.
Mm-hmm. That's what this whole podcast is about, to be honest. That's hilarious.
You can talk about religion and externalizing faith. You can talk about story, and you can talk about genetics and ancestry. You can talk about experience. You can talk about circumstance. You can talk about any experience of humanity. And at the end of the day, you have to decide, how are you relating to it? What are you doing about it? And what do you believe about it? Regardless of anything that anyone's ever told you, what you've ever read, at the end of the day, you are actually the only one that can definitively decide what you choose to believe, do, act, and feel.
Mm-hmm. Preach.
And if we talked more about that, regardless of who was our Messiah, what happened 2,000 years ago, who fought who 200 years ago, why this land was stolen 100 years ago.
It's always now.
If self-accountability was in any of those conversations, we would be having different conversations.
Mm-hmm.
If we were having reflective thought around, I felt threatened because my resources are limited and you have better resources than me, and I feel scared of my survival, and so I'm going to attack you. Because that's really what's happening, right? We fear lack, we feel survival. We're concerned and we attack, versus the element of vulnerability of, hey, I feel scared for my survival because we are limited on our resources and you have plenty. Can we build a relationship so that we can relate to one another, so that we both feel supported? Right? Mm-hmm. First of all, in my capacity, why would I not want to allow my needs and your needs to be met? And this can go in so many infinite directions around dating, friendship, business, anything.
Let's talk about just basic needs.
Why would your needs not matter to mine? And why would my needs not matter to yours?
Because of trauma, of what happened.
Because of fear.
Fear is the cogblocker of all dreams.
If my fear that your dreams somehow limit my dreams, inherently that's not trusting, which is so ironic.
Which is not true.
True. It's not true at all. But the irony of belief at its core is being able to have faith in something that is not seen. Right? So even if we can't see all that's possible, if I'm afraid that you're going to take from me, I'm not believing. Which is crazy, because at a very fundamental, regardless of what belief you have, if I believe that I'm protected, why would I fear you? Why? If I believe that I'm saved because of my heart, why would I not leave with my heart? Why would I want my, you know what I mean? Why would I feel protective? We identify now, currently, with certain stories that are absolute. That is how it happened. That's the only story that's happening, weirdly enough, of the so many people that have existed on this planet. It's weird how we only have certain voices. Right?
There are our own voices too sometimes.
True, but documented voices.
This happened to me when I was 13. This happened to me when I was 15. It is a part of me.
It is, but let's talk
Forgive,
about...
never forget, which is sometimes bullshit. But
400 BC. Let's talk about 1500 BC. AD. Let's talk about the 1800s. Let's talk about the documents so far that we have for the last 2,000 years. Those are being used as fact and as absolute. Well, if objectively we're thinking, right?
Do you think the percentage of the world believes exactly what you just said?
I think that they absorb exactly what those documents are as truth.
Yes.
For sure.
70%? That's still a lot, but...
It's a big amount.
Yeah.
It's a big amount. And it's been kept in place by the great emotions of guilt and fear, which I touched on. Once you transcend feeling guilty for who you are, once you ask, why am I feeling guilty, and what can I do about it? Right? If you're living a transparent life, authentic, expressive, and direct, it is very hard to feel guilty because you're not hiding actually anything. Guilt is inspired through fear and hiding of oneself because of shame. Shame is created.
Did you release that, all of it? Do you experience a guilty conscience?
I think all humans do, to some extent. We're trained to feel guilty, right? I feel guilt. I felt guilt for how I behaved in high school and college, how I didn't understand how to be loyal to people. I felt unworthy of love, and so I behaved in ways that weren't honoring love. But the question of guilt is interesting because we attach to guilt as a form of identity.
Interesting.
Right? You can look at the whole psychology of the victimhood mentality, the martyr mentality. Guilt gets stuck to us, right? We didn't do something that sucked and we have to recover. We are guilty, right? Notice how that changes our relationship to identity and who we are. If I'm
guilty... But that's
guilty,
a present tense.
True.
Speaking about the past, because everything's in the past. Even 10 minutes ago, us talking was in the past.
Exactly. So, when I'm feeling guilty of something, I no longer see time. I feel shame. And I...
Regardless of time.
Regardless of time. And I disassociate from who I am. Because now I believe that I am somehow less than. Right? So this form of human that deserves love no longer exists because I'm experiencing guilt. And in our culture, in many cultures, the conversation around guilt and shame is very self-deprecating, right? and very internalized. Even talking about feeling guilty is something that like empowers guilt, right? Because if you even feel guilty about something, then maybe something's wrong with you, because that whole dialogue, right?
Well, I'm going into a world of total understanding. We're on the same exact page. I hope people that are listening out there even understand what we're talking about. But I also every day tell myself that I don't have a guilty conscience. Like, there's nothing in me that, oh, I feel like I manipulated this person, or I'm walking with a fuck ton of lies. I do have regrets. I've got memories from years and decades ago that still are thoughts that impede the aspect of time you were talking about. So yeah, it's October of 2021. I still feel bad about something that happened in 2006 when I was a junior in high school and I was a dick to someone, right? Like, I've forgiven, I've accepted myself. It is what it is. Move forward. But I guess living, carrying whatever I have in the moment, I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I wanted to preface with that to say, like, as a child, like, we're conditioned to
perpetuates
do
guilt.
this. Yes.
Well, we're not. We're conditioned. You're right. It's not a natural existence. Guilt and shame are conditioned. Because as you watch a child, they're expressive. They don't know what's wrong or right.
We've literally heard, and this is a scientific thing, we've heard the word no over 40,000 times before we're at the age of 4. No, don't do that. No, don't touch that. No, get back over here. No, no, yeah.
And so I actually try really hard in my classroom, like, whoop, pause. Pause. Pause.
Pause.
Pause.
Yeah, I like that.
Pause. What's up? You know? And
that's powerful.
It is powerful because
I was just a fly on the wall in your classroom.
yeah, that's happened many a time, as you can tell. It's a very deep conversation of, oh, hey, it sounds like, and even before I continue, like, you know, not even just with me, but other students reading what we need to be reading. It's like, oh, pause. You know, I'm sorry, student. You're not being given the respect that you deserve. What's our expectation when someone's speaking? Are we there? What can we do about it? And if more humans related to one another in a sense of, first of all, what you're doing isn't an attack on me. You may or may not know that you're disrespecting me. I don't have to attack you. But I'm going to pause this for a moment. Let's talk about this for a second. Hey, what did we agree? Is this what we're doing? Oh, it's not? What's happening here? Check it. Let's rise to the standards that we set to ourselves. Because otherwise, going back to that self-accountability, especially teaching kids, like, children actually have a lot of power.
And I feel like are y'all on a 6-hour, 7-hour, or are you the main teacher, or how does that work?
So I see my kids very beginning in the morning, and I have 3 classes throughout the day, and then I have my advisory for lunch.
Because the vibe that you're giving me, let's just say as an open to everything student, right? The philosophy that you have, the perspective that you have, we're adults. You're a grown-ass woman. I'm a grown-ass man that has gone through some shit. If I put myself back in my 6th grade mentality, I'm like, oh, Miss Swinford's pissed off, ha ha ha, like, kind of class clownish. But it seems like you're literally trying to instill a consciousness, a teaching that is necessary within society forever.
Yeah, I mean, you can teach emotional responsibility. You can uphold standards and requirements of emotional responsibility. As an adult, I think we should absolutely do it more. We haven't learned that yet, which is why we're attacking one another. Right? Because if we actually asked...
So we weren't taught that, and now we're trying to teach others based on our...
Well, we're not even trying to teach each other. We're just trying to, like, pretend that we deserve something that we've decided that we deserve without really expressing that, and then attacking those that don't know how to meet it.
Aren't we either agreeing with what you have to say, or I'm fighting you because, or I'm sad because I don't believe
Well,
you live in a different paradigm and you have a different perspective.
And that's...
You suck because you're making me feel. And I'd rather blame you than...
Mm-hmm. So...
Again, be open to everything, guys.
This is a great expression because it's something that I felt really, even in my own life, passionate about, is how do we resolve conflict? Right? What you're talking about is conflicting ideas, right?
Do you want me to answer from my perspective?
Well, we can expand on that. It's not let's have a
that's
whole
a rhetorical
conversation.
Question. That's for someone to keep thinking about.
Both.
Yeah.
So it's someone planting the seed, and also let's dive in. Because what you're talking about is, if I have my opinion, you have your opinion. We're coming at it. Are we actually coming at it interested in understanding one another?
Yes.
Or are we coming wanting to defend our version of what we think? And I think, first of all, we got to ask that question. Because what I've witnessed a lot of is, this is what I think. It's like, okay, great. Is there enough space for me to think? The amount of space that you're asking and actually demanding, are you allowing others to have that too?
You just got me so much in the present moment that, and I hope you guys are here with me, or us in the present moment, but just to even think to say that, right? It's like a preface question. We were talking about like the importance of questions.
The art of questioning is power. It's power. Insight. Because it goes back to when you're being told something and you just absorb it as truth. Is that really your truth?
Some people don't like to feel. Therefore...
We are taught to fear feelings.
Especially as a man, Southern man.
For sure.
I was suppressing and battling that shit for probably forever. I'm trying to unwire what I was taught as a culture and just a guy.
Yeah. And
don't
actually...
be a pussy, don't act like a girl. These are things that are literally in my head forever if I become emotional.
I'm so thankful that you brought this up, because I really wish as a woman in the dating field, and even just in humanity with some of my best friends as men, recognizing that as women we're not the only ones struggling, and it's tender because there's a lot of shit that has never been voiced, and I agree, it needs a platform. Also, something that I've witnessed with men as I've healed, like myself, it's like, man, fuck. They don't know what they're doing either.
I usually apologize for my gender.
Wow. And also...
Because we have no fucking clue what we're doing.
True, and even in our conversations, if you notice, like, I hope when I communicated with you, it wasn't necessarily shameful. It was like, hey, I don't know if you know, but this is who I am. Mm-hmm. This is how I like to relate. This is where I'm perceiving your behavior. What's up?
Yeah.
Right? It gave you space also to express yourself versus condemning you to something that I don't know who you are.
Yeah. But when you were talking about like the context of dating, I don't know unless you tell me.
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know. Yes. Men are dumb. We try. We really do. But again, we have these limiting beliefs. We have the shit from the child. It's like, how do guys become vulnerable enough to understand vulnerability? Because I would say generalization. I don't know the percentage. 50%? Nah. Let's just say 2 out of 10 men are going to be like, man, that bitch is crazy. No, you're crazy. You are too, man. Like, that's not a nice thing to say.
Fair.
And just suppress everything that makes you a shitty person.
But this is a great conversation, because I've had women, I'm a woman, and there are times I've behaved that wouldn't actually be safe for a man to be vulnerable. It's not creating the space for it.
Mm.
And I think it goes both ways, because as much as women want men to share how they feel, they're fucking demanding about it. I would feel rebellious and isolated. And like, I would want to go be a hermit if you're like requiring me to be a version of myself that you need, but I'm actually not feeling safe to be myself because you don't actually want me. You want the version of me that you want to fulfill your need.
You know what my analogy is? Same exact thought.
Yeah.
Mine is, what's the story that makes this person desirable to the story that I've had and wanted? And if they don't fit that story, I'm going to get mad at them and I'm going to try and change them. And then why don't they fucking change for me? Why is this such a toxic environment?
Yes.
I feel you, man.
I feel you. This is one thing that I love about living in Austin is it's as growth oriented, as wild as it is, the amount of community that I have in Austin that is specific to self-reflection and consciousness is there. Some of it can be laced in ego and it's very tricky, and also at the same time there is a vast foundation of like conscious community that I've found in Austin. And I was at a event a few weeks ago. It was like a cacao ceremony, magic, DJ, super chill. Honestly, like, of the demand of the environment, it was like 30 minutes of a magic show that was teaching us to remind us that magic exists. Magic is real. Mm-hmm. We are our own source of magic.
Belief and perception, right?
Always.
I don't want to see that. It's not.
Or checking your mentality and asking, what have I decided is reality? What am I already believing about my day, about myself?
Isn't reality reality? I know that's an interesting question. But
it is, but like, who's creating that reality? Who's assigning that reality is reality? Who is?
I've been at this job for 2 years. I've been dating this guy who I hate for 6 months, and I live in a place that has rats.
Okay.
That's reality.
Let's play with that, though. Yeah. How about this? Here's another form of that reality. I'm in a space that isn't supporting me. I'm living in an environment that doesn't meet my needs. I feel better when I have cleaner environments to live in. And I need relationships that support me when I feel vulnerable.
Let's go deeper into the brain. I love that you did that on the spot.
Notice two different versions of that experience. One is, I'm experiencing something. Another is, something's happening to me. My environment's not supporting me. Okay, I have the capacity to change that. What environment would support me? Okay, I'm in a job that feels empty. Cool, great. What do I need to do on my resume? Yeah, right? I'm in something that I can change. Race, like the infinite amount of human suppression has all related to silence.
Can I cut in and you can continue, because this is something I've believed since I was probably like a teenager. But justifiable reasoning is the scariest part of our brain. Because someone can justifiably reason
anything.
That's why I'm going to kill this guy to get into a gang. That's why my wife deserves to be cheated on. Why, like, and I don't know where I'm going with that, but I just feel like people need to hear that.
I love that you brought that up, because I think it goes back to that question, and I think we talked about this before. Maybe I was talking to you about this, but beforehand, before we were recording, before going in, we were talking about this. In conflict resolution, asking, am I more committed to connecting with you, or am I more committed to being right?
Yeah.
I would not need to justify myself if I was not having to defend a stance. I'm only justifying because I'm defending, because I'm protecting, because I feel threatened, which means I'm not in love.
All reaction.
Exactly. Versus I feel scared. I feel scared.
I wonder if we're going to go into exactly what I want to go into just with this statement. But
Shall we?
The unconscious mind is emotion. The
Sure.
conscious mind is logic.
1,000%.
It's basic sales,
it's
right?
It's integration of emotion and logic. I won't say that it's just logic.
When you're swiping on Instagram, ooh, I need that. Is it worth that money? Right? It goes from the unconscious brain to the conscious brain.
True, but
we always experience emotion before we rationalize it.
Fair, but there is a difference between rationalizing and justifying, and there's a difference between internalizing emotion. So I'd be mindful of just prioritizing logic over emotion, because logic can also be very dangerous as well.
100%.
Because you...
gut feeling, living out of the heart.
Not just gut feeling, but when you're making decisions, and I know economics and politics are very historically this way, although ironically, politics can be very emotional. But, especially now, but...
Well, that's where irrational and illogical comes from, is because the emotion is so intense. Imagine your subconscious program of your DNA is so to the core morally about this, and fuck everybody else that doesn't believe that.
But here's the thing, though. It's so ironic because at the source of our soul, right and wrong doesn't exist.
You're the only person that's ever agreed to that statement with me.
I don't
believe it either.
Being is not a right or wrong.
Human being.
Being is an existence.
Being human.
Purity, okay? Mm-hmm. We are beings.
Yes.
Okay? We have established versions of that being that are acceptable and not, and why. And interestingly enough...
Well, the ego labels it.
True. But what's funny is what was okay in 1400 is not okay in 1800.
Right.
What was okay in 1900 is not okay in 2020. What was okay in 1999 is like old in 2019.
Should we justifiably reason? That's, I think, what we were talking about with the kids, and I don't want to go back into it, but it's like, why are we being silent? Well, what if I was a 6th grade kid, like, I can't be silent? Or versus, pro-choice. I don't give a damn what your 1800s moral code is. It doesn't really matter what I believe as, let's just say, a contributing sperm donor. It is a female's choice, right? Like, it is not my body. It's not anything to do with me.
Fair. So, and why is what you think is right what I should be experiencing as right? It goes back to that right or wrong.
Because it is.
Right, but like, what makes it?
Your justifying belief.
Exactly, which is ironic because all of the beliefs that we have on this planet are created by humans.
That was a story.
That is a story.
That they believed or was a little
and wrote.
Amended.
And 2 tender points. All stories of the deepest religions that we have on this planet were written by men years after the actual happenings. There is a definitive moment where the Bible as we know it was created. Okay? I'm going to try to be as factual without creating facts as possible. So, there is a conference that happened that decided what stories of the Bible would be in the Bible. And I think that's related to the King James Bible. I may be wrong.
Didn't Moses write the first 5 books?
I can't confirm that. My understanding of the stories of the Bible is that majority of them are not first-hand written. They're second-hand accounts. which is also really funny.
Edited?
They're edited and many, many years behind. There's also stories of Mary Magdalene. I love this concept. Mary Magdalene has 3 Gospels that are actually written historically. And in all 3 versions of her Gospel, the same amount of pages are burned through it. I think it's like 7 pages from the Gospel. And obviously it wasn't included in the Bible because she was a whore until like a few years ago, which is crazy.
Was that too offensive for a certain group of people?
Well, no, it's not even offensive, but it's just false. It's straight up false. So
that was proved recently, or it's just an adopted belief?
No, the created version of Mary Magdalene as a whore perpetuates an idea of women versus men. Right? Notice how all the disciples are men.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Weird.
Yeah.
Majority of the stories in the Bible are men.
Huh.
Majority of people in power in the church are men.
So the 10 disciples get 1 lady. Lady gets 10 men. The men get 1 lady.
Weird.
Dude.
Weird. So, in fact, if you objectively look at some of these stories in the Bible, it even talks about Jesus kissing Mary Magdalene on the mouth. You rowdy teenagers. But
I thought Jesus could do no harm.
Question though.
That's lust, isn't it?
Well, that relates to guilt and shame.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Did Jesus ever talk about guilt and shame?
No.
No, he did not.
Right? Or
acceptance and love.
Yeah.
Acceptance and love.
Methods of how to live.
Guilt and shame were created. Jesus did not speak of any of that at all.
If you're religious and still with us,
good luck.
I think that was just like a punchline or a summary of like, adopt the methods of life, acceptance and forgiveness. Is that what you said? Or
yeah, acceptance and forgiveness, and those are the root of love. Yeah. So I love how, and this goes back to the art of questioning. Why have we allowed certain things in our lives to go unquestioned, regardless of their source? And why are we not allowed to question them without shame, guilt, and fear?
Well, I, being this open to everything guy, I always said I was going to stay out of politics and stay out of religion. Because it really doesn't matter.
Fair. But society is built around those things, whether you like it or not.
Maybe I'm judging my platform based on the perception of what's going to be happening outside. I really don't care. But to piggyback on the religion thing, well, I thought currently still, like Moses wrote the 5.
I don't know.
5. Well, the acacia bush, or the acacia tree, the burning bush.
This is a great
has been apparently found to have DMT in it.
Mm-hmm.
DMT is the most psychoactive compound on Earth. And if you're sitting there inhaling a smoking bush of DMT,
you're going to experience some
I
pain.
would assume that everything he wrote was correct, right? Totally. But that motherfucker was hallucinating out of his mind.
Majority of the story is hallucinations.
Yeah.
It's metaphorical. It's parable.
It's also beautiful. You know?
Fair, but
gives people a peace of mind, even though they're sometimes terrible people.
It
and
depends.
They can go back to church every week and
here's the question though: is it true peace of mind if you're using it to escape? Because inherently,
your question, I don't know again if it was rhetorical, but call upon the name of the Lord and you shall be saved. Do you forget that there's an ideology of like, don't abuse that? You know what I mean? Like, better yourself.
Here's the thing though, that I love about, which, maybe love is a strong word, which I think we are experiencing a heavy amount of emotional dismissiveness in our experience as a culture. And across the globe, we rationalize it around religion, but in general, why would you not give space to question and only give an answer?
It could be going back from the trained mind that never knew how to grow out of the box to believe that that is and this is everything. And I live my life based on that principle and moral and ethical because it makes sense and it rationally suits my unconscious...
Your ego.
Yeah, well, there you go. Ego in the shortened word.
Shortened word.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're really... let's dive in a little bit to tender spot with religion. If we are prioritizing faith, then our sense of self should be surrendering. But if we're truly surrendering, then we don't need to be protective. But if we're not protective, then why are we fighting? And if we're fighting, then we're not truly surrendering. And if we're not surrendering, then we're not truly in compassion, which is a pillar of Christianity.
Whoa. You should draw out that diagram if it's not already a diagram you've seen, because that's beautiful.
Interesting concept, right?
Yeah.
If you really dive into...
Press the 15 back button 2 times.
Yeah. I'll repeat it. Let's see if I can say it. If we are experiencing life, okay, and we say we have faith, then if we have faith, we are surrendering and trusting. And inherently, if we're trusting, we're not protecting, because we don't need to protect if we trust. And if we're not protecting, then we don't need to be fighting, because fighting inherently isn't related to compassion. Because if we felt compassionate, we would understand and connect versus aggress and fight. So, any justification around fighting is inherently ego, which is exactly the opposite of having faith. Which is ironic, because that's what most wars are fought about.
Yeah.
And most men create those fights.
I have a very gigantic ego.
It's fair.
Huge. I battle it every day.
Understood.
And it's awesome. But from your parallel, I also try to, like, the ego doesn't exist.
Ooh, but it does.
I try to live out of my heart.
That's actually dangerous to think that it doesn't exist, though.
No, it's not supposed to. Maybe. Yeah.
No, it is supposed to. It's survival. It's supposed to. It's actually supposed to exist.
I hurt people's feelings with the ego.
The ego is important. Your relationship to the ego is different. Let's say, for example, you have a group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know which ones are the caregivers. You know which one is the shine of the night. Mm-hmm. You know which ones you're going to have to be like, hey, this isn't about you. Your ego is in that party. Your consciousness is creating that environment. Mm-hmm. Your ego can get invited. That's great. It's not dangerous unless you allow it to overcome the whole experience. Mm-hmm. But if your ego is like, hey, I want to be heard, cool, let it be heard.
Did I say it didn't exist, or I'm just trying to squash it every day?
I think you said it. I feel like the I didn't exist thing, and either of those are actually, I would still respond the same way, because it's actually not the suppression of the ego that's important. It's the integration of the ego. It is inviting, same with, what we've identified as negative feelings of depression, isolation, all those things. Come hang out. Loneliness, come hang out. Jealousy, fuck yeah. What's up? Oh yeah. Man, you feel threatened. Okay, what do you feel threatened by? What's up?
Well, that goes back to your little diagram that you're going to make, is the protective.
Right.
The nature of a man, in my opinion, wholeheartedly, and this is one of my biggest flaws, I will be glad to recognize it, is the idea of the label of, if we're together, I'm protective of you because other men want you. I know that. That's why I want you. It's not just me that wants you.
That's
but
fair.
we have agreed or committed or whatever, and well, trust is on that protective thing. If I know inevitably that you love me or care about me, and no guy will even come close to me, then I have trust. If I have my ego, right? We're talking about the ego, the male ego. If I have a hint of like you're slipping protective measures, and then it just fucking crumbles from there.
Oh, this is a great topic because...
Well, that's where I was trying to... I thought that's where you were going, is based on relationships.
No, but I mean, jealousy is... I love the conversation on jealousy because, it goes back to that self-accountability. I'm feeling threatened because I'm not trusting myself. I'm not trusting my worth in this experience, so I believe that someone else can come in and take it. Do you know how that works?
I do.
Same with which as me as a female, I love when a man claim my presence. I've been on dates where I'm exposed. And it's not even like conscious. It's just like, you're not really with me. You're here with me, but you're not actually like
present.
Claiming the space. It's not even present. Because they can be present, but you're not claiming the space. And I've been with men that I'm like, damn, you have claimed me. And there's literally no one in this planet that could like come into our dynamic. Because you are so focused and clear about your expression and connection with me that it doesn't even matter if it's a first date. Because the rest of the world doesn't exist.
Time doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And I've also noticed, as a woman, my jealousy and being able to express, like, I'm feeling jealous right now. Okay, why? It's because You've
been hurt before.
Well,
you fast forward and time lapse through exactly what happened to make you feel that way in the first place.
But I'm going to challenge you. I am disempowering myself by prioritizing someone else. I believe that someone else is more worthy than me because of something that I have identified that I don't have. Because I feel insecure about it.
So it goes internal.
It's all
has
internal.
Nothing to do with the guy.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not at all. I will say, though, there are dynamics that play off insecurity, which is toxic and not very healthy at all. Not healthy in general, specifically, at all. Do not relate to someone who plays off your insecurities. But check first if you're playing with your insecurities, right? So let's say, for example, this is something that happened in a relation of mine years ago. Friend that I've known for a very, very long time. And we started dating. New dynamic. They had a neighbor. Sweet, amazing girl. We're now friends. At the time, even then, we're kind of friends, but our relationship was weird. The intimate relationship was weird. It was just weird. Okay? So at the time, I told my friend who I was dating, hey, I feel weird. I'm noticing insecurity come up in me that's never happened before in our relationship. Of the 7 years that I've known you.
This was recent?
No, this was 4 or 5 years ago. But I mentioned at the time we'd still had almost a decade worth of friendship. And then we started dating and I was like, I've never felt jealousy before. And can I talk to you about it? And the immediate response was I didn't do anything. That's actually not what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm just sharing with you that I feel insecure and I'm looking for insight. I would love to learn how you're relating to this person so that I know that my insecurities aren't assuming things.
Can I give you a perspective from the guy?
Sure, but let me follow through with it for a second. Okay? Because I was like, I'm not saying anything happened. It's just, I feel weird. I feel weird. Things are happening with them more often, and plans are being followed through more often than with me. And we've never had this dynamic, and now all of a sudden we're dating and you're prioritizing someone else. Feels weird. Okay? The jealousy, more specifically, came from in me. First of all, I wasn't being a priority in the relationship. And I was with someone that couldn't prioritize me. Flat out. They couldn't. Emotionally, physically, they were not in the space or want to prioritize me in the way that I needed. So that already wasn't helping us. Secondly, girl was younger, okay? My insecurity of, I'm getting older. She's graduating from her master's. I don't have a master's. She must be smarter than me and younger than me. She's more successful than me at a younger age. She's got a master's with art. She's more creative than me. Those are all insecurities I have around age, intelligence, and creativity. That has nothing to do with man at all. Or the woman. At all. And it took me a while, and I was like, okay, how do I embrace my age? How do I relate to how I want to relate to age in a way that's not fearful? How is my body actually changing instead of being committed to this idea of who I was? Like, what's happening to my skin? What's happening to my body? How do I want to take care of it? I'm not 25. I'm not 21. Thank God I'm not those ages anymore, but my skin's different. My muscles are different. My hair is, my body is going to change. Right?
It stems from that story that you saw with that person.
Right?
To fulfill your story of...
I'm afraid of getting old, and my value of myself is related to youth, which is our culture. Right? We prioritize youth. Okay? Creativity. Oh, this girl has more creativity than me. I'm not okay, well, how am I creative? But at the same time, all the women in the magazines are under 20, usually.
It's probably the thing that's wrong with fucking social media and society and everybody's fucking comparison disorder or whatever it's called.
Body dysmorphia. There's a lot of things that we can go down with the beauty industry. But it roots from externalizing value and using expectations that are not real to justify beliefs about ourselves that are not healthy. And being able to tell the girl, hey, you're great, and objectively I understand that. And it took me a year to be okay with my insecurity around my creativity.
When you say her, is that not still you?
Well...
And the follow-up question is, do you believe that you're your thoughts?
You create your own reality through your thoughts. Yes. If I hadn't vocalized that to another person, the girl that I felt jealousy towards, it wouldn't have healed as much. The power of me vocalizing and being seen by another woman, being like, hey...
Is that shame or vulnerability or...
It wasn't shame, because I don't play that game, right? Shame only exists when you're believing that something's wrong about you. And nothing about me that I feel is wrong. I get to choose how I relate to it, and that's another story. But nothing inherently about me is wrong.
That's beautiful. Everybody listening, continue. It's perception, guys.
Nothing inherent. Well, it's not even just perception. Because perception will
Belief?
fuck you up.
Perception is the mind. What does the heart say? It's like full on
Being
being.
is beyond perception.
Mm-hmm.
It is existence. Okay. Essence, in its purity, in its emotional expression, in its cellular expression, in its frequency of expression, has no identity other than what we attach it to. So the moment we start attaching understanding is the moment we start compartmentalizing and limiting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Being is purity. Us as humans, the moment we come out of the womb, we got nothing. We're here. Everything else gets laid on top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? As a human in general, when you really think about it, everything else other than you breathing and your body somehow processing itself on its own. What actually is there? Everything else is changeable. But your breath and the existence of your body. So and this goes back to ego, your sense of identity. And this is what I
call it the story that you tell yourself.
True story, but
about yourself. It could be anything.
It can be anything.
And people get lost in that shit.
I know.
It's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy. We're all fucking crazy.
Well,
but we're creative. You use that creativity to write something new, believe something different.
I think it goes back
to something different.
What are we valuing? Mm-hmm. Right? Because if we value the need to protect ourselves, then we're going to create a story of victimhood.
Maybe reevaluate your values, because we are 31 and 32. Mm-hmm. The values were different at 25, different at 20, probably different at 70. I don't know. Well, but that's the beauty of fucking living as well.
True. And what are the values of the society that I'm living in? Mm-hmm. And how do they actually hold to my values? Mm-hmm. Right? So there's this balance between the individual and the community. And that's something that our culture has a lot to grow on. Right? Because we are hyper individual, which means that we're actually attacking the community. We don't value community the way that we could. Our value is not only an individual reflection, but a societal reflection. If I value me versus I value us, different conversation.
Mm-hmm. Do you have another poem that you could share with us? That's the vibe right now.
For sure. Let's get that going. So, yeah. I know exactly which one I'm going to do.
And we're going to leave you guys on this because it's deep, and we'll probably get to another episode in the future, but
this is actually, this is a great mic drop. I hope you're ready.
Leave with the mic drop.
If you're not, then you should be. Shame. It's a poisonous game. It falls down like rain, burning my skin with this hate. Can't you see what's at stake? Love and lives melting away, all because of your chase for fame. The unruly wild you try and tame, drained, with death I am stained, and I never even knew their names. No, this can't wait another day, to stay quiet to the hope you need us to stray. But from love I was made, and I'll trade all the diamonds, those pretty little chains, for the hearts through which this world was made. That's a shine that won't ever fade. So rearrange your focus on what you want to create instead of spewing this bullshit called hate. Be the change. Rao.
Muy bien. Very beautiful. I really, really appreciate this conversation.
Likewise.
It was great. How do people find you if they want to?
So on Instagram, I'm Jaguar High Priestess.
Sound it out.
Jaguar, like the animal, which I would encourage you to feel connected to animals if you aren't already ready. Jaguar, Rao. High, like the sky. And priestess, like the feminine divine.
As always, guys, thanks for listening. My name is Eric Johnson, and I'm creating what I believe to be my dream every day. And I welcome you into the world of being curiously open-minded. Originally started as a social experiment, open to everything, infuses personal development, curiosity with other rad individuals onto a platform of encouraging universal support, building a stronger mindset, becoming healthier, and being open to everything. Till next time, guys. Thanks. If you haven't followed, Instagram, open to everything. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Show your support. Show your love by your support. Appreciate you guys. Till next time.